What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Gage, and welcome to the channel. I am super excited to be able to share my take on ice barriers in a brand new Yu-Gi-Oh format called Yu-Gi-Oh Genesis format. This is an official alternate format for the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game that is being supported by Konami. And in a nutshell, if you're unfamiliar, it is a new format in which essentially they are changing up the rules to a slight degree, meaning that there are no link monsters and no pendulum monsters. And there are essentially a list of around 500 cards that have a point cost associated with them. And based on that point cost, you have to be able to build a deck which limits the types of cards that you are able to play in this new format. The standard format is up to 100 points. So you are not able to play a multitude of cards that essentially go above that 100-point threshold. Only the 500 cards that are on that designated list that Konami has created have a point cost associated with them. Every other card in the game is essentially free to play. So if you're unfamiliar, there are plenty of other channels that have dedicated videos going over the specific rules of Genesis format, but that's kind of just the overall gist of it. Just noting that in regards to this profile, I will go over the different cards that have associated point costs so that you are familiar with the types of ways that you can go ahead and build this deck in particular. But once I realized that Ice Barrier did not have many cards that were a hindrance on the point list for Genesis format, I realized that this was definitely going to be a contender for one of the best decks in the format for sure. So I played around with it a lot and I found a build that I really enjoy. Please keep in mind that it is still so early on because this is a brand new format that we are still innovating. We are still trying to find the best ways to be able to build, but I have found a build that works for me and I'm excited to share it with you. If you've been cooking up things for this deck or other Genesis decks, definitely let me know in the comments, maybe certain techs or certain things I should be playing because I love that the community is all coming together to deck build, and honestly, it's just been really fun exploring this new format together. So please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you're fans of content like this. I will definitely be continuing to post more content for Genesis in the future. And without further ado, let's just hop right into the profile. So, of course, we are playing 3 copies of Revealer of the Ice Barrier, just an absolutely powerful starter for the deck. First and foremost, you have the ability to, while you control another Ice Barrier monster, your opponent cannot tribute summon. So it's negligible. You're really not using the card for its Floodgate effect, but it is nice to have. You're really using it as a starter. You could discard a card, special summon an Ice Barrier tuner from your deck, and you could special summon for the rest of the term, except for waters. That's perfectly okay. We are only playing mostly water monsters in the entire deck, so you never have to worry about its restrictions. So 3 copies of Revealer is really nice to have. And we are playing 3 copies of YUGIOH, Swordsman of the Ice Barrier, a very nice extender to have. Its Floodgate effect is while you control another Ice Barrier, your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters in the grave, which is really nice. But you also have the ability to, if you control an Ice Barrier, special summon this card from the hand in defense position. And if it's normal or special summon, you could special summon a level 5 or lower Ice Barrier from your hand or your graveyard. So it has that restriction, so you can't special summon itself, but it is really nice to be able to go ahead and just continue to extend. And because it is a level 6 tuner, it is easy to go into some big synchro plays. We're also playing 3 copies of Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier, just one of the best extenders that the deck has at its disposal. It is a level 2 Aqua monster that says you could tribute 1 other effect monster and then special summon up to 3 Ice Barrier tokens. And if you do, increase this card's level by that number. Also, you cannot special summon for the extra deck except for water synchro monsters. That's perfectly okay. If it's sent to the graveyard, you could add 1 of your Ice Barrier cards that is banished or in your deck to your hand. So that is good for you to be able to add essentially whatever it is that you are missing in your combo. So yeah, it's just a great extender. and a great consistency piece to have in the deck. It is also really nice. I don't mind playing it at 3 because it does trigger if it is discarded off of your Revealer, and it triggers if it's discarded off of your Azurine, which we are choosing to play as well, which I'll talk about in just a few moments. I'm also playing 3 copies of Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier. This is a pseudo starter. It's obviously not as good as Revealer, but it's still good in its own right because, first and foremost, its Floodgate effect is that while you control another Ice Barrier, monsters your opponent controls lose 500 attack and defense. It doesn't really come up, but during your main phase, you could send 1 level 3 or lower Ice Barrier from the deck to your graveyard. So that does get you access to your Mirror Mage. That triggers its ability to search. You could grab a GeoGius, and then you could special summon to GeoGius, bring the Mirror Mage back, and then start to do some crazy stuff from there. So that's why I like Hexa. It is just a nice starter to be able to have if you don't have access to your Revealer. For another extender, we are choosing to play 3 Speaker for the Ice Barrier. While you control another Ice Barrier monster, defense position monsters your opponent controls cannot change their battle positions. That does actually come up in certain instances in which if you put your opponent's monsters in defense position off of the Lancia's effect from the extra deck, then they can't switch it back. So that is pretty nice. But you can, most importantly, special summon this card from your hand if you control an Ice Barrier, and it has the ability where you could banish it from the grave to special summon an Ice Barrier token. And that does come up for being able to continue to synchro climb. And if you have, if you go into Changing, for example, you can banish this to go ahead and trigger your Changing because Changing is a nice water synchro monster that we have the ability to play. I'm also playing 3 copies of Ice Shade Ran Azurine. Just a really good card. The fact that it could discard 1 card from your hand to special summon an Ice Shade token. It becomes level 3. So that is essentially just a 1.5 card combo to be able to get into an easy level 10 synchro monster. And because it discards, it does trigger your Mirror Mage, which is just really fantastic. So yeah, the fact that this deck has the ability to play such a powerful extender that goes straight into a synchro monster like that is just so good in this format in particular. And of course, I'm playing 1 copy of General Ryo of the Ice Barrier, just one of the best cards that you're going to want to special summon off of your Lancia for sure, because when an effect resolves that was activated by your opponent's effect is on the field, they could discard a card, and if they do that, if they don't discard a card, that effect is negated. So essentially, in a nutshell, it says if your opponent wants to use monster effects on the field, they're going to have to discard a card in order to do so, and that can be debilitating because it means that your opponent has to play in really awkward ways if they want to be able to play the game, and eventually they will run out of cards. And yeah, usually once you have the Lancia with the General Ryo on the field, it is GG's for your opponent. So yeah, I love playing the 1 General Ryo. It is just such a powerful card. And so I chose to play this variant. So actually, let me talk a little bit about the spells. Easy, we're playing 3 copies of Medallion of the Ice Barrier, just an absolutely free search for any Ice Barrier monster. So it essentially allows you to get whatever it is that you're missing, starter, extender. I'm also choosing to play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin just because it is a free card, just to be able to help boost the consistency and see some of your powerful cards. I'm also playing 1 copy of Freezing Chains of the Ice Barrier. Really good extender because when it's activated, you could target a level 4 or lower Ice Barrier in the grave and special summon it. But if you control, while you control 3 or more Ice Barrier monsters you control are unaffected by the effects of your opponent's monsters that were special summoned from the extra deck. So it's just a really nice protection to be able to have in the event that you are able to establish a bunch of Ice Barrier monsters. And it's searchable off of your Mirror Mage. I'm also choosing to play 1 copy of Winds over the Ice Barrier, just a nice contingency in the effect that maybe one of your starters does end up getting stopped, because it says you could tribute any number of Ice Barriers, special summon from your deck that many level 4 or lower Ice Barrier monsters with different names, and notably it does not negate its effect. So, you know, if you have a Revealer and it gets stopped, you could go ahead and Winds the Revealer to go ahead and grab something like your Hexa, and then go ahead and use your Hexa's effect, right? So it's just nice to be able to have a card like this that kind of helps you to play around certain pieces of interruption. You're not going to see too much interruption in this format just because hand traps are associated with a point cost, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But again, additional extenders are always appreciated. And during the main phase, except the turn it was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your grave, target one of your Ice Barrier monsters that is banished or in your grave, and add it to your hand. So really nice recursion to have in the late game. And I'm also choosing to play one Frozen Domain of the Ice Barrier. This is definitely a card that is kind of underrated, and I do think can shine in this format in particular. It does say your opponent cannot activate the cards or effects in response to the activation of your Ice Barrier monster's effects. So while that doesn't necessarily mean your Lancia, it does mean pretty much all of your other Ice Barriers, which is really nice. And if a monster is special summoned from the extra deck, you can return this card to the hand or shuffle it into the deck, one Ice Barrier monster you control. Then you can place one card from the field or either graveyard to the bottom of the deck. That is just incredible. That is a nice removal because of the fact that it is not targeting. It is not destruction. It is essentially just putting a card back into the deck, which is really, really nice removal. It does have a downside where during the end phase, you have to reveal 3 Ice Barrier monsters with different names in your extra, or you have to destroy this card. But because of the fact that you can return this card to the hand as one of the costs to be able to utilize it, means that you can just constantly be reusing it. And if you're in a situation where you are just looping this card over and over, chances are you are winning that game. So normally in the modern format, a card like this wouldn't necessarily be, as considered, but I do think it does get a chance to shine in Genesys format. And so a lot of my point allocation is going towards hand traps. So I am choosing to play 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. A few things. One, the reason that we're choosing to play the hand traps is because we are playing a combo that utilizes Crocodragon to draw into a bunch of cards. And we need, what really makes that combo thrive is the fact that you want to draw into cards that actually do something. It does not help if we are just drawing into nothing but engine. The strength of the Crocodragon draws, and that combo in particular, is the fact that if you're able to draw into a bunch of cards, you might as well draw into things that have additional utility. And hand traps are just one of the few ways that you can, really take advantage of those draws. So yeah, it's one of those things where there are not too many cards on the Genesys point list that are directly affecting our engine. There are 2 cards, which I'll talk about when we get to them, that are affected by the engine. But I figured, you know what? To really make this deck as competitive as possible, I figured playing the hand traps as a way to, not only have interruption if we don't go first, but to have additional access to utility off of the additional Crocodragon draws just feels really powerful. So we're also playing 3 copies of Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion. So again, we are trying to max out on many different types of hand traps that we could draw into to interrupt our opponent. I'm also playing 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. Again, just a really powerful card that you have access to. And we are playing 3 copies of DD Crow, which I think is going to be a premium hand trap in this format just because it is free. So there are no points associated with this card on the point list in Genesys format. So guys, that's it for the main deck. Let's go ahead and quickly talk about the extra. So first and foremost, we are playing 2 copies of Coral Dragon. This is just really nice as a way to synchro climb because it does have the ability where you can, once per turn, discard a card, target a card on your opponent controls, and destroy it. But if this synchro summon card is sent from the field to the grave, you could go ahead and draw a card. So again, that is the reason why we are playing so many hand traps and utilizing them for our point allocation, because you are going to have access to draw power that other decks do not necessarily have access to. And you want live draws. You really want those live draws. So yeah, Coral Dragon is necessary for the combo. Yeah, it's really nice to be able to have the consolation of drawing on top of that. I'm also choosing to play the Brionac Magical Ice Dragon. So because we're not playing Link monsters in Genesys format, there are a lot of flex spots in the extra deck. And I think that this is actually a card that normally in the modern format would not necessarily see play, but I do think is relevant for this format. You're not necessarily using it for its effect. Its effect is fine. If it's synchro summon, you could discard a card, target a card in the field, and return it to the hand. Having non-destruction removal is always useful. If it's special summon from the grave, you could target it. You could discard a card, target a card in the field, and return it to the hand. Not really relevant, as there's not really too many ways that we'd be able to get it back from the grave. The reason that I'm playing it is because it is a level 6 synchro that is specifically not a tuner. So there are certain combos that require you to go into a level 6 tuner to be able to climb, but there are going to be instances in which you need a level 6 that is not a tuner. So this is just really, it has come up in my testing, that in the grind game, you need a monster that is a level 6 that's not a tuner. So I do recommend Brionac as that spot. And of course, we are playing one of the most powerful cards in the game, in my opinion, but definitely for this format. And we're playing 2 copies of Lancia, Ancestral Dragon of the Ice Mountain. It's got a lot of text, so we'll go through it one at a time. Once per chain, if your opponent special summons a monster, you can go ahead and special summon an Ice Barrier monster from your hand, deck, extra deck, or graveyard. So pretty much anywhere. And then you could change one attack position monster your opponent controls to defense position. So a lot of the times I'm beelining for the General Raiho because of its Floodgate effect. But you can use this effect up to twice per turn. So if your opponent special summons again, you could go ahead and trigger Lancia to go ahead and special something else. A lot of the times I like to go for Georgius because I could special summon the Georgius and then special summon something like a Mirror Mage that might be in the graveyard, which if the Mirror Mage ends up getting sent to the graveyard, it ends up essentially becoming a search target for you on your opponent's turn. And because the Georgius is usually paired with 1 or 2 other Ice Barrier monsters, it activates its Floodgate effect to turn off your opponent's graveyard. So usually the Master Field, is absolutely devastating, and there's not really much that your opponent can do. Just to give you an idea on what it will look like if you haven't seen it. Usually if you have just a simple Lancia on the field, your opponent special summons a monster, you immediately go into General Raiho, for example. If your opponent special summons again, you could go into Georgius. The Georgius will trigger to be able to go ahead and, special summon pretty much whatever you want from your graveyard. But like I mentioned, I do enjoy going for the Mirror Mage, just because if it's sent to the grave, you could get a free search. And so this is just a very powerful field because now you have the Floodgate for monster effects on the field, in which your opponent will have to discard if they want to activate monster effects on the field. And the Georgius will make it so that your opponent's graveyard is shut off from monster effects. So yeah, one Lancia is able to make that happen if your opponent special summons literally just 2 times, right? So it is just incredibly powerful for that effect alone. However, if this face-up synchro summon card and its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, so that could be through anything. It could be through a Raigeki. It could be because your opponent kaijus it. It could be because it is Nibiru'd. Any reason that your opponent would remove it from their card, you could go ahead and special summon an Ice Barrier synchro monster from your extra deck, and it's treated as a synchro summon. That is incredible because it means that you are able to go ahead and play very powerful cards, like, of course, the one Trishula Dragon of the Ice Barrier, which this is one of the few cards in the actual core of the deck itself that is worth points. So this is worth 3 points on the Genesys format list. 3 points really is nothing to us. So the fact that we do have the ability to play it is nice because when it's synchro summoned, you can banish a card from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard. Noting that you do not necessarily need to have targets in all of those areas in order for you to use its effect. So if you do go into a Lancia and it ends up getting Nibiru'd, you at least get a nice consolation prize of getting into the Trishula and then being able to banish a card from your which is nice. So yeah, Trishula is one of the monsters that you could synchro summon off of the Lancia's effect. However, I am also choosing to play, if I can find it here, got a lot of cards, the Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier, which is just as powerful. When this card is synchro summoned, you can banish up to 3 cards your opponent controls. That is non-targeting. That is just absurd that you could just straight up banish 3 cards your opponent controls if it's just brought onto the field. If it's destroyed by an opponent's card, you could special summon a Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, from your extra deck, and its attack becomes 3,300, and then you could have the attack of all face-up monsters your opponent controls and negate their effects. So a lot of the times, your opponent will try to push. Eventually, they have to remove the Lancia, in which case, the Trishula will come out, banish 3 cards they control, and even if they manage to get rid of this, you are then going to float into a Trish, have the attack of all their monsters, and negate all their effects. So, guys, this is just a very powerful deck. I'm sure that you can understand why. We are able to cheat out so many amazing boss monsters that are just absolutely free in Genesys format. So for another Synchro 10 that I choose to layer on top of my end board, is the Ice Jade Gamir Azurine. It has the ability where you can quick effect. You can face-up monsters you control cannot be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects this turn. So it's nice on your opponent's turn to be able to just kind of quick effect, activate this in a pinch, and protect your cards from being removed. So, and if you just so happen to activate this in response to your opponent's card or effect activation, and your opponent has cards with that name on the field and or the graveyard, you could banish it. So if your opponent ends up summoning a monster and activating its effect, and you chain the Azurine, you can actually go ahead and banish that card on top of getting the protection. So yeah, this is just a really nice card to be able to go to kind of layer your M board and make sure that your Lancia is that much more protected. As I alluded to earlier, we are playing Qingying. The fact that it's a water just really makes it an extremely powerful option that you can play in this deck. It gets super beefy because for each banished card, you can gain 100 attack and defense, and monsters your opponent controls lose 100 attack and defense. And if it would be destroyed by card effect, you could banish a card from your grave instead. And if a card is banished, so that can be triggered off of its own effect or from your speaker if it's banished from the graveyard, for example, you can go ahead and banish 1 card from your opponent's field and your grave and their graveyard. So yeah, Qingying is really nice for being able to break boards, and the fact that it's a water monster means that the water lock that you have in the deck really doesn't do anything to you. As options for Synchro 8s, we are choosing to play White Aura Whale, just as a really nice card to be able to help break boards. When it's Synchro Summoned, you can destroy all your opponent's attack position monsters, and it can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. If it attacks a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing battle damage. And if it's destroyed by an opponent's card and sent to the grave, you can banish 1 other water monster from your grave and special summon this card back as a tuner, so it kind of comes, it's a nice recursion to make sure it's super sticky. So yeah, White Aura Whale, this is really good for being able to go second. And so the next card I'm going to talk about is where the remaining points for our allocation go to. And that is because there is no other Synchro monster that meets the requirements that this card quite does. And that is Adamancipator Resin Dragite, which is 20 points on the Genesys list. So the reason we're choosing to do this is because while White Aura Whale is really good for going second, there are going to be plays in which you have to go for a Synchro 8 on your turn. And Dragite, being a water Synchro 8, is the best card to be able to go into in those instances, because the relevant effect here being that if you're when your opponent activates a spell or trap, while a water monster is in your graveyard, which there will be, you can quick effect, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So this is really just one of those cards that, depending on if you do end up getting interrupted or you don't have access to your full combo, there are going to be instances in which you still want to be able to get access to a Synchro 8 on your turn as additional disruption, and Dragite fits that bill. So the points in our list are pretty much going towards the hand traps that you saw, the Ash, the Bell, the Drolls. It's going towards the 3 points for the Trishula, and then the remaining 20 points are going to Dragite, so that brings the total, I did the math already, but it's around 98. It's basically close to 100. And so that's where all of the points in Genesys format are going. So I highly recommend Dragite being one of those cards because it is just so good in the extra deck since it's a water monster. So yeah, it comes up for me way too many times because I thought about maybe cutting it and replacing it with other hand traps or whatever the case may be. But I think that just having access to the utility is more important than having access to additional hand traps, especially since we're already playing so many. And last but not least, in terms of the main synchro monsters that we'll be going to, is the Ravenous Crocodragon. This is really great for the combo because of the fact that when it's synchro summoned, you could draw cards equal to the number of non-tuners used for its synchro summon. Usually you're using your things like your Coral Dragon in conjunction with a number of the Ice Barrier tokens that your Mirror Mage creates. So the Coral Dragon, between the Coral Dragon and the Crocodragon, you're going to be drawing like 4 cards, which is just absurd. And you can quick effect discard 2 cards to target a card on the field and destroy it. So maybe you don't need some of those hand traps, or maybe you just drew into additional engine that doesn't do anything. So those additional draws can also be converted into a free quick effect pop off of the Crocodragon. So yeah, this is just an amazing water synchro that we are able to get access to in this deck. And that is why I am choosing to play the 1 copy. So guys, because we have so much free space in the extra deck, because of the fact that we're no longer playing Link monsters, normally I'd be playing something like the Marincess Coral Anemone. I'd be playing maybe like an Almirage to link away my Mirror Mage, even SP in a pinch, if we're not waterlocked, being able to get access to removal, things like that. So because we have access to additional slots in the extra, I'm choosing to play Ultimate Slayer in the side deck, which you'll see in a moment. So we are playing all of the best free options for the Ultimate Slayer targets in the extra deck. Malong being one of them, because if you send it off of the Ultimate Slayer, you can return target 1 face-up card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. We're playing the Aggregator, and if it's sent to the grave, you can target a face-up card on the field, negate its effects until the end of the turn. And Garura, if it's sent to the grave, you could draw a card. So I would play Entis, but Entis does cost points, which would put us over the threshold. And for an Ultimate Slayer target, I didn't think it was worth it to play. But yeah, the fact that we have additional slots in the extra essentially means that we really don't need to go into every single card in our extra deck. So I was thinking about playing maybe additional level 8s, level 6s, and then I realized it's kind of all unnecessary. And so I'm really just allocating these slots as Ultimate Slayer slots. So guys, that's it for the extra. I'll quickly talk about the side deck. Because all of our point allocation went to hand traps, every single card in the side deck is free. So I am choosing to play 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This is going to be a premier card in this format because it is free in being able to help break boards. So yeah, Dark Ruler is just my recommendation for helping to break boards. And as I alluded to earlier, we are playing 3 copies of Ultimate Slayer, again, because it's free. Your opponent cannot activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. Send a monster from the extra deck to the grave. Target a monster your opponent controls with the same type, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, or Lynx, which don't matter, and then shuffle it into the deck. So that's why we are playing 1 copy of each of the different summoning types, because of the fact that, most of the time your opponent will either be playing a Synchro deck, a Fusion deck, or an Xyz deck, and we will always have at least 1 target to be able to send off of the Ultimate Slayer to remove that specific card. So yeah, Ultimate Slayer, I always felt like this was an underrated card, and it really isn't worth playing in the modern format. There are certain formats in which it shines more than others, but man, I'm really glad that Genesys allows for cards like this to be able to come to the forefront of the metagame. So I definitely recommend 3 copies of Ultimate Slayer in your side. And then just for some back row removal, we are playing 3 copies of Twin Twisters just because it is free. A card that was removed from the metagame just because there are, so many other better options these days. But Twin Twisters is still really solid. We're going to be running into, I anticipate running into a lot of back row heavy strategies in this format. I think back row is at a premium. Not just because a lot of really good back row just so happens to be free in Genesys format, but there are still really good decks that utilize traps or, face-up speller traps, field spells, things of that nature. It's going to be hard to see where the meta ends up falling. But for example, a popular side deck card is cards like Iron Thunder. And that is just an incredibly powerful trap card. And so you're going to want to make sure that you don't necessarily walk right into it. And Twin Twisters is just a nice free way to be able to deal with it. You could certainly play something like Cosmic Cyclone, but I like the utility of being able to remove multiple cards in a pinch. And so for an additional hand trap to be able to side out one of the other hand traps that we have is 3 copies of Artifact Lancia. It is free, so if you do just so happen to be playing against a strategy that utilizes banishing, then having access to a Lancia that you can draw off of your Crocodile, or just draw naturally, is going to be really nice. And then for a card that I am choosing to side for going first, I'm choosing to play 3 copies of Spellbound. I think this card is really underrated because Dimensional Barrier costs points in Genesys format. That is no longer an option. This is normally what this spot would be. However, on top of your end board, if you're going first and you side this in, if you have access to your combo and you set this, that's pretty much game. Because if you know that your opponent is playing a strategy that utilizes Xyz, Synchros, Fusions, whatever the case may be, you could just wait for them to summon a bunch of monsters, flip Spellbound, and now they will not be able to use those monsters to be able to extend and push further to be able to help break your board. So I think Spellbound is definitely underrated, and it's an incredibly powerful card that you can have access to in this format. So I highly recommend at least considering it in the side deck. So guys, that is it for the profile. Hopefully you learned something. If there are critiques of the deck, maybe any tips that you might have been experimenting with, I'm certainly open to hearing different suggestions in the comment section. It's one of those things where we are still so early on in the metagame that there are so many different things that we can experiment with. And yeah, the format is still wide open. I think that this is very exciting. I think that Konami needs to be given props for at least attempting a new format. They said that it is going to be updated rather frequently. I anticipate maybe once every month to 2 months, in which case we could see the meta constantly shifting, which is a nice breath of fresh air from the modern format, which, man, if we end up getting ban lists every, 3 to 4 months, sometimes even longer, the meta gets stale really, really quickly. So Genesys will be a nice breath of fresh air, because if they do update it as frequently as they say they are, then we can start to see shifts much faster, which in my opinion is really exciting. It might be frustrating if it just so happens that certain decks or strategies that people invest in end up getting hit. I do see that as being a potential downside in the future. It depends on how heavy-handed they are with some of their hits. But I trust that Konami will, it seems like they are taking a step in the right direction. One of my biggest criticisms is that we really just didn't have an alternate format that was supported. And so I really do think that we should be, as a community, pushing for Genesys format because of the fact that they're trying. And this does have the potential to be a really nice format if done well. So I'm excited for what the future holds. Thank you so much for watching my video. And if you stuck around until the end, you're an absolute real one. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, as I do plan on having content, similar content posted up in the future. And until next time, GG.